Welcome to Close Up with Paul McNeil, an interview show where I host members of the Longmeadow community and I ask them what makes Longmeadow such a great place to raise kids, what's working, what's not working, and just helping celebrate this town as a wonderful place to grow up. So thanks for joining me, and thanks for joining us. It's Shelly Warren. Shelly Warren is a licensed independent clinical social worker that works for the school district of Longmeadow. She is an incredible asset to this district with regards to prevention and intervention and treatment and recovery. And so she's been a champion from day one from my coordinating this coalition. And so I'm really glad to have Shelly Warren join us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
My pleasure. I have a bunch of questions about who you are, how you got into this field, how you do what you do, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about social host liability and prom and graduation season in particular, and what parents can do to sort of keep their kids as safe and healthy as possible during this potentially challenging time with regards to social behaviors and substance use. So my first question is, who are you and what do you do?
All right. Well, we're starting easy.
Yeah.
So my name is Shelly Warren, and I am the Substance Use Response Coordinator for Longmeadow Public Schools. And I've been in this position for 14 years. And before that, maybe a little known fact, I was a history teacher here for 8 years, right out of college. And then I left in between and spent some time in community mental health during a 10-year stint in between before I came back for my current role.
You were at Chicopee in between or Chicopee before?
No, Longmeadow.
Didn't you work in Chicopee?
I did my student teaching in Chicopee, which is another little known fact.
Yeah.
That Marty O'Shea, Tom Landers, and I all did our student teaching with the same teacher at Chicopee High School 3 years in a row. Yeah.
So Shelly Warren, Tom Landers, and Marty O'Shea all have one teacher in Chicopee to thank for their career in education.
Correct.
Oh my! What's the teacher's name? Let's give
Phil Corso.
Phil. Is Phil still around?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Phil, call in. We don't have a phone number, but find a way to connect with us. That is incredible. I did not know Tom was part of that triangle.
Yep.
That's cool. And you've worked in social services in the past, but it seems like you brought a lot of that to this role here in the district. And you're the substance
Use Response Coordinator.
Thank you. Substance Use Response Coordinator.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean?
So I coordinate prevention and interventions for students K-12 technically, although I am housed at the high school. So I take any referrals for students who might be struggling with substance use or be exhibiting substance use at school. And I also coordinate the peer leadership program here, which works on school climate-oriented issues, because we know creating a positive school climate is a huge protective factor for substance use and mental health concerns. So a section of my job kind of works, I view that as more like tier 1 prevention-oriented support. But then I also provide tier 2 and tier 3 supports for students.
What does that mean? What is tier 2
and tier 3? So tier 2 would be more like targeted interventions. So that would be like groups that I might run, or a specialized class that I might run for students who have particular risk factors. And tier 3 would be more like intensive interventions for students who are actively engaged in risky behaviors connected to substance use or have a substance use disorder.
And that might involve referring out to a treatment center or something like that? Okay.
Yeah, I would support the student and the family with any referrals out to treatment centers, and also any transitions back from
which might be
treatment.
Even harder than going into treatment.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I have loved working with you the last 7 years, and your role in the schools, it's sort of been my guiding star for how to do prevention work for the larger community. So you are rooted in the school district. I am located in the school district in my role, but really my job is to bring the district and into the town and the town into the district, in that I work with law enforcement, I work with business leaders, I work with parents, young people, that's still school. I work with faith-based groups. So it's been awesome to lean on you and take advantage of all the amazing protective factor work you've been doing in the district. You have a big special day coming up on Thursday.
Yes.
It's been my favorite day of the year working in this district, every year, and I volunteered, but I can't make it this year.
I know, we are going to miss you.
But can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I just think it's such a shining star for this district.
The event is now called LHS Unite, although it was called Unmask LHS before the pandemic happened, and then unmask had different connotations, so we had to drop.
It took on a different meaning.
Yeah, we had to drop out the unmask. So it's LHS Unite, and it's hosted by the peer leaders who coordinate a day's worth of events and activities for freshmen and sophomores who attend. So it's a way to kind of build more cohesive school community, for students to build connections and relationships with other students that they might not otherwise encounter because they're maybe in different classes or different sports or not in sports at all. So it's a way to kind of bring students together and also have a place where you can kind of delve into talking about issues that might be facing students in our community and find support in each other. So it's a great day.
I feel like it was doing DEI before DEI became a thing too. That idea of like, you have students from totally diverse backgrounds, bringing them into the same space and making it safe to just share who they are, what they love, what they don't love. It's been, I've always worked with my own little group of students, and you work with that group of students the whole day, and you really connect and bond with your group members. And at the end of the day, you just feel like this little family, and it's so special. And I've just seen it every single year it's happened. I've seen students the next year, and they look to me as if I'm still part of that group, even though I'm a little bit older than their peer group. But such a positive connecting opportunity for students. And it's rare to have. One thing I've noticed, there's been a lot more, Nilda Irisari's done a great job with some focus group and qualitative data collection in the district since she's arrived. And one of the things that's come out of those groups is just students want to spend, they want more time to socialize with each other and spend with each other outside of the academic, institution that is a high school. And Unmasked and now Unite is like the perfect opportunity for that sort of, it's a full day of just social, emotional connection, students being vulnerable, students supporting each other. And it's just so special. And
thanks for the great review.
I love being a part of it. I'm bummed
one of my favorite reviews from students, we have them write feedback after, but one of them was like, I wish I could just do this day again over and over with different students each time.
Yeah.
Because you do get to know like the people that you're with, and it is a special day.
Yeah, you should be so proud of that program. It's just like it's just a gold star. So what are you most proud of in the community of Longmeadow? You live here, you work here. What are you most proud of?
Yeah. At first I think the students here are very, there is a very positive school culture, I want to say. Like there's a good relationship between the students and staff, and I feel, people come together when they need to. But in pertaining to my job, I'm actually really proud that our district has my position and has had it for 40 plus years.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
It's a position with longevity that was probably like ahead of the curve, when it was created, and they have continued to support the work of substance use prevention and connected it with like the broader issues of social emotional learning and mental health and seeing the big picture. And I think that's gone a ways towards like destigmatizing substance use, and I'm very...
And mental health too.
Yes.
How many? Yeah. I feel like a high school is lucky to have one social worker that's committed to their population. And how many social workers work in your high school?
We have 2 full-time social workers who are more mental health designated, and then I'm...
that's incredible.
Yeah, and my position is more the hybrid with like teaching functions as well as counseling
they don't
functions.
Teach.
No.
You do. Okay.
Yeah.
You have a cool job.
So it is.
You get to teach and support kids' mental health.
I know, it's great.
But I cut you off. So you just love the identity that students have with this just being a healthy, positive place to be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's exactly what you said, right?
Not exactly, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it.
We'll have Brian edit and post just some subtitles of exactly what you said, so that I don't look like a fool. My next question is what is working? Because you see tons of data and you get tons of personal anecdotes from the students you work with. So what's working in Longmeadow? What do you think's working well to keep young people healthy and safe in town?
Well, you're familiar with the rat park studies?
I love the rat park studies.
So for people who might not be familiar with the rat park studies, they found like if you put a rat in a cage by itself and you give it access to substances, I think cocaine actually is what they test it with, and water, that a rat alone in a cage will become heavily addicted to the cocaine really quickly.
It'll keep
to the
getting that
point,
cocaine.
yeah, and it'll neglect everything else to the point of losing its life, right? And then, but if you put the rat in a cage with other rats and interesting stimulation and things to do, and you still have the cocaine in the water there, the rat is much less likely to become addicted to the cocaine. And I do think Longmeadow has some great rat park features.
I like that.
And I think
If you want to raise a couple of rats, there couldn't be a better town than Longmeadow.
We have a lot. I'll quote Sandy McDonald, who always said, like, there's something here for everybody to get involved with if they wish to. You know, so we have a range of activities, and I think our school is really supportive of students following their interests and creating a club. If there isn't something here that represents your interest, the administrative is super supportive of you getting together with other students and creating it. You know, if it doesn't exist.
Like 30-something clubs, or is there?
Oh, I think it's more than that.
So many clubs. Yeah.
So I think that's good. We have a lot, and parents here are really supportive of their students being involved in multiple activities and multiple interests. So students here have a lot of options of things to get involved in. And they do care about their health, you know, by and large. So, yeah.
There's, I think it's Wednesdays. This is a shout out for Wednesday afternoons in the library of the high school, Dungeons and Dragons. And I work in the library now, and every Wednesday, it's this unbelievable energy comes through the door, and the students cannot wait to connect with their friends and play Dungeons and Dragons. And I don't know how much of a spike Dungeons and Dragons had after
Stranger Things.
Thank you. Yeah, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool to see like 50 students and there's 4 or 5 different games going on, and dungeon masters, and it's just so cool to see them like totally supported, accepted, and just a wonderful option for students if they want to participate. And that's just one of the clubs that are happening after school. And it goes to show you it's not just sports in school, which I think a lot of high schools can fall victim to that. So what's not working?
Well, I think one of the challenges we face, you and I have worked together a long time on this, is that sometimes there are still community norms that seem to normalize youth, especially underage drinking, and make it still, buy into that rite of passage mentality about youth drinking. So that to me has been like a challenging needle to move, in the community. So.
Yeah. When I was in high school, the legal age was 18. That's sort of what I was dealing with when I was growing up. And there's that old thinking around how normal it is or should be for young people to experiment and or just casually or chronically use a substance, alcohol in particular. And I've just heard really great prevention leaders in the last 5-10 years focus on, we did not know then what we know now about brain development, and it may have been normal back then, but it was still impacting the brain's development, and it's still wiring your brain for addiction. And we just know so much more about brain.
Me too. And I mean, from that standpoint, I look at addiction as like a preventable disease.
Yeah.
And if we know that if people delay their use, they have almost 0% chance. If they delay into their 20s, almost 0% chance of becoming addicted to a substance. So that's a gift that we can give our youth, and I do want that message to be out there, and for parents in the community to be aware that it does not need to be a rite of passage. And for some, when you open it up as a rite of passage, you're opening them up to a risk. If they have other risk factors for addiction, especially, you're opening them up needlessly to risky situations, to adverse outcomes and to addiction. So
it is. There's kind of this rush to have there's this pressure and this rush for parents to like let their kids or expose their kids to these adult behaviors as early and as safely as possible, but the safety is always sort of an illusion. But what is and this is, I'm sober now, but I'm like, there's such a rush to like, they should be able to experience what it's like to be under the influence of alcohol or other drugs before college, because it's like there's this weird myth that if they drink before college, they will know how to drink responsibly, or they'll know how to drink in a more safe fashion in college, but I've never seen that bore out in college. If anything, I've only seen the opposite, where the earlier kids have been exposed that I've socialized with, they just are more comfortable pushing the limits. I mean, the brain isn't wired to set safe limits for itself yet, so it's and it's wired to experience unbelievable pleasure off of these, dopamine spiking activities like sex, drugs, rock and roll. But the brain is not wired for these managing long-term consequences of these, even short-term consequences for these behaviors.
No.
So I've never understood why there's this pressure to like drink early so you know what it's like to drink later. And my thinking is like, you can have a relationship with alcohol the rest of your life. You can have a relationship with cannabis the rest of your life. You do not have to rush it all in before the age of 25. I know the drinking age is 21, but we know the brain really starts to slow its development at the age of 25. So just slow things down. Let kids experience everything else.
Like the research shows, even with a family history, if somebody waits until they're in their 20s to drink, their risk goes to almost 0%. Where like with a family history, if you drink when you're like early in high school, it's like a 40% chance that you would develop an addiction. So like you can control that. And we do message that really strongly in the health classes so that they know, like students should know their personal risk, their medical history when it comes to addiction, and know like how those decisions could impact that. So we're trying to get the students on board with that, but I think we still, need the messaging to go more to the parents.
I think you're right. Well, the parents didn't grow up in that.
Right.
These students are now growing up in this, so we're hoping that maybe they'll raise their kids a little differently. As far as
Possibly.
like the good news is we've seen, the student health population data is just getting better and better and better with substance use. Not so much with some of the other mental health stuff, but basically this cohort of students in high school today in America are the healthiest substances in the history of America as far as substance use.
Right.
And we want to capitalize on that and take advantage of it and grow from that and make even healthier choices. But it is hard when you have a parent population that didn't grow up in that. It was more normal to drink alcohol. It was more normal to consume cannabis. You're doing great work. Any urgent concerns you have about teen substance use in Longmeadow that we haven't talked about?
Well, you and I have partnered together on making sure all of our students know about the fentanyl risk, which is a national crisis, and how to respond to an overdose, if they encounter one. So we've done naloxone training for all students, the feedback from students on that is that they're really getting that message. Last year was the first year that we had 0% of our students say that they had misused an opiate of any kind. So that was a great milestone for us to reach in our data. So I feel like the number one risk for students across the nation is that right now, that you would accidentally be exposed to fentanyl and have potentially fatal outcome. And I feel like we've done a great job on that. So because we've done that, I would say my most urgent concern is going to sound strange, but it's nicotine. I feel the nicotine use, which is not the majority of our students by far, but the amounts of nicotine that our regular nicotine users are taking in is unprecedented. Like it's just
because of vaping in particular.
Yeah, the vaping, the disposable vapes that are popular are the equivalent nicotine of like 25 packs of cigarettes. And if you have a student using one of those in a week and a half, let's say, like they're using nicotine at a rate that most late middle-aged chain smokers wouldn't be using nicotine, and they're still like 14, 15, 16, and the impact on their brain development from that. And we know like nicotine is a substance that does alter the brain in a way that makes it more sensitive to other substances afterwards. So it increases like the addiction potential for somebody later. It's like if somebody was a nicotine user in high school and then they're exposed to an opiate later, or they start using alcohol later, like their brain is more vulnerable because of that nicotine use. So I'm actually really concerned about nicotine, and I have just seen students really struggle with it, really struggle with trying to quit it. It gets a very, very strong hold really early, and it impacts their functioning within the school day in some cases, because it's just, I don't think we, including myself, fully appreciate the difference in their experience because of the difference of this product compared to the forms that nicotine used to be in.
Yeah, that mode of consumption is just so,
it's a different product.
Too easy.
Yeah, too easy. And the same thing with, like the high THC concentrate dab pens, like they're using a product that's not like the weed their parents used. It's a totally different experience and a totally different substance. And so I think, unfortunately, like those are a couple of substances that are almost like a new product that we don't really know the impact of, and it's these kids right now that are experiencing it. So
Yeah,
those are big concerns of mine. But
And I think rightfully so. I mean, you were saying, the wiring of the brain for addiction. So it's like, if the brain can have a huge spike in dopamine or serotonin or endorphins or whatever from some external source that's super reliable, super consistent, the brain wants to do that when it's a teenager, because it's like, whatever makes me feel good, that's great. Like, give me that good stuff. And the problem with nicotine is neuropharmacologically, I think it's even more addictive than cocaine. So the vaping pens might seem like a little bit innocuous as far as like, well, it's not heroin. And it's like, people don't start using substances by using heroin. They start using substances by using nicotine. And that wiring for addiction happens in the brain at those really important developmental years.
Yeah.
And so there's two things happening. It's like, you want to build lifelong habits when you're a teenager, because there's this use it or lose it synapse pruning, right, in the neural pathways. So if you've never learned a language and you hit the age of 25, it's going to be very hard to figure out how to learn a language, because you don't have that neural pathway. And the same with, if you have never sought social connections and spending time with people to feel good about yourself, by the age of 25, it's going to be very hard to develop that neural pathway. But the nicotine it's too predictable, it's too good at making you feel good right away. And so your brain is going to seek other ways of feeling that kind of instant external feelings of joy and those spikes of dopamine. So
it's also so short-lived that I think once somebody gets addicted to it, the time between doses that they can go without feeling anxious because they're in withdrawal from the nicotine gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So the way that they report about it is saying like, oh, it helps me to relax, but what it's really doing is helping you to relieve your withdrawal symptoms from the nicotine. Wow. So it becomes this like feedback loop of anxiety for students who are using at that level. So they start to struggle more with anxiety than they ever did before they picked up the nicotine.
So increasing stress, increasing anxiety, even though it's masking that when you're under the influence of it.
Yeah.
Under the influence of nicotine, it's like a whole new thing.
Yeah, and it's not, the influence of it is like only 10 minutes max.
So brief,
so
and so what do? You want to take another hit.
Right.
Yeah, it's so challenging. The good news is I just was crunching the numbers on regular student vaping rates for 2024, and it looks like from last year to this year there was a 30% decrease in Long Meadow High School student vaping, which is immense. I don't want to.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. I don't want to credit it all to the vaping detectors in the way that this district has sort of done wraparound.
Yeah.
We care about young people making healthy choices. They're not as concerned with let's drop the hammer on these punitive responses to things like vaping in the bathrooms or vaping in school, but it really is a wraparound mental health, social emotional health. How do we support these young people making healthy choices? And nicotine is going to impair their ability to make safe and healthy choices every day. So it's just been awesome to see the response from the district, the response from the administrators, and now the response from the students, which is like, I'm going to find ways to not vape as regularly. It's just happening less this year than last year, 30%.
Yeah, we put up a little barrier, by having the vape detectors.
Exactly, making it a little bit
harder to do, and so the students who aren't hooked can avoid it more easily and then hopefully not become hooked.
It's the same with
we're not curing anybody's addiction by having a vape detector in there, but we might be preventing somebody else's from developing.
This is the beauty of prevention. So you put these little barriers in, and it can make a big deterrent, a big difference for young people. Like increasing the cost of cigarettes was a huge deterrent for young people to smoking cigarettes.
Well, not being able to smoke in restaurants, or like at your place of work, like those things that made it harder for smokers to smoke in different places, but also like made the behavior less normalized. Yeah. So like even if vaping in the bathrooms was normalized, because so many students were doing it, and now it's not. So that's a message in and of itself too. Like less students are going to assume it's normal because they're not seeing it as publicly in the. And I'm not saying nobody's vaping in the bathrooms with the detectors, but the report that I get is that it's much less
normal, accepted,
much less brazen, I guess.
Yeah. Students not having any.
Not standing in a circle in the public part of the bathroom, using the vapes. So.
We're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Vast majority of kids are in Long Meadow making incredibly healthy choices around their substance use and their social skills. Vast majority. So the norm is healthy behavior, and I think it's really important how much you and your team have put a stress on how normal it is to be healthy and supportive. I think it's great.
Thank you.
All right, and now I'm going to ask you a few personal questions.
Okay.
So I'm just so curious about how you got into this role and into this work and what your childhood was like as a teenager. So like, who helped raise you and how did they do?
Okay. Where to start on that one? I'm going to just not
Let's
do a
start with
deep,
who
deep
did not
dive,
raise
but
you.
We're
No,
not
I'm
going to say that. No, I'm going to credit my mother with a lot of. I mean, I should give both my credits, both my parents credit for raising me. But in terms of like the difficult years, my mom really was the one who wouldn't let me go down certain paths and made like really hard choices to bring me back, when I was. So I want to credit her with that, for not giving up, on me when the going got tough, so to speak. So.
Thank you, Mom.
Yes.
Thanks, Mom. And how'd she do?
She did well. I mean, she did the best that she could with all the information and resources that she had, and that's probably true for most of our parents, right?
Yeah, they want to be their best.
Yeah, definitely. And in her case, I would say I'm one of those people that the court system I was involved in the court system because of my substance use when I was a teenager, and my mom made the most of that, is what I want to say, is, and it helped me to be forced a little bit to make some changes. So I'm one of those people that really needed the external structure and controls because I did not have the internal resources or motivation to change what I was doing. So my mother partnered with juvenile justice programs and resources to like help me get what I needed and to help me kind of like move past a rough patch in my life. So
she wasn't in denial about what you were going through.
Oh God, no. There's no denying it.
She was connecting with other people and sort of that
Yeah.
village mentality of like helping
Yeah.
each other out and helping you out.
Yep.
She sounds awesome.
Really difficult.
Yeah. Is she on the Cape?
Part of the time. She's in
Okay.
Florida, part of the time on the Cape, part
Oh
of the
my
time.
God.
So,
She deserves that.
Yeah.
Those two places.
She does.
And I want to talk about stress. So like, what stressed you out in high school? Because I think something we're struggling with students every day is like.
Can I
man,
give? I feel like I don't
sure.
want. In case my parents watch this, I want to give my father credit for
Yeah.
something.
Hey, Dad,
So
you're not out of the.
My parents were teenage parents, and I really credit them for like stepping up to that role. And it really, when I say doing the best they could with what they had, like my dad was 17 when I was born, and
wow.
I think about like he quit school, but then worked full time and went to night school and acquired a trade, and then did what he needed to do to like support the family
Yeah.
at a really young age. So I also need to give credit there for like I think about that now that my kids have gone through that age,
know.
and I think about them being faced with something like that at that age. Like wow, just it's incredible. So,
17.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
How old were?
I say we grew up together.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Totally. I've heard that about younger parents. It's like.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like they help their kids launch out of the nest, and it's like, all right, time to become an adult. It's like time to live their own adult
Yeah,
life. So
yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, what a great product that they developed. Great product, Shelly Warren, adult Shelly Warren. I have so many other questions I want to ask you because
Okay.
you have such an interesting background. But I really want to get to social host liability because you have a really great background in how to support families through this time of year. So could you explain what social host liability is? And how does this impact parents and families?
So social host liability is the legal reality that parents are responsible, or homeowners are responsible for the consequences of any substance use in the home that they control.
Okay.
So it's not only for furnishing alcohol or other substances, but it's even for allowing the consumption of on their property. So then like if there are negative consequences to that use, such as an unintentional overdose or a car crash, like the parents who are in control of the property where the consumption happened can be found liable for that. Criminally, there are consequences, but there's also civil liability there as well. So
And this is something that's happened in Longmeadow. This is something there's people struggling with the consequences of people hosting substance-related parties today. And so we're sort of, some of the work that the coalition's done and your office has done is trying to decrease the impact of youth substance use, and in particular this time of year, it's like the highest risk time of year, right? So social host liability is a great thing to draw people's attention to, of like, you're on the hook. You know, whether you intended to have a substance using party for your teenagers in your home or not, you're still on the hook liability wise.
Yeah, I do want to say, like, I think if you went out to dinner and you weren't aware that your child had a party while you were out to dinner, and something happened, I don't think they'd be coming for you. You know, but if it's like, oh, your house is the place where people have been gathering and that's a known thing, you know, then I think you're more likely to be, you know, pursued for liability, I guess I would say.
How about some alternative ideas or strategies for parents who want to host safe and substance-free parties during grad season?
Well, we have advised parents about this over the years, because the grad parties used to be a lot more prevalent here. When I say grad parties, like, there's a difference between grad party and graduation party. So the grad parties tend to be the nighttime parties that are for the friends, the graduates and their classmates and other high schoolers. And the graduation parties tend to be a mix of friends and family, and they tend to be during daylight hours. Okay. So my advice is, you know, if you want your child to be able to celebrate with some friends, like, make it a mixed group during the day, and don't allow alcohol consumption by the high schoolers who are there. That's my best advice. Yeah. Based on, you know, we've had some really challenging situations in years past from the grad parties, and you know, there were events that I've hosted where parents who have hosted some of those parties in the past came and shared with the next upcoming parents, don't do it. Yeah. Like, don't do it. And they shared their experiences of what it was like to try to monitor those parties and prevent something bad from happening, even when they were not serving alcohol. Like, the, you know, students would be arriving under the influence. Like, you don't have control over who's coming to your property and what condition, and how that would unfold, like, in the course of the night at your house. So, yes. So
even there's that illusion of control and safety. So it's like, okay, I'll host my kids and their 10 closest friends, and I'll allow them to drink, you know, I don't know, a case of beer or whatever. You're not taking into account the teenage brain is wired to, like, push those limits. So I'm allowed to drink. Okay, I'm going to bring a handle of vodka, you know, unknowingly to the parents, and all of a sudden you have a much different safety issue on your hands without even knowing it. So it's really tricky and so nuanced for parents, I think, when they're thinking about hosting these parties. Have you noticed any changes or trends in parental attitudes toward these sorts of things?
Well, the parties definitely are not what they used to be, and I say that in a positive direction. I think more parents became wary of the parties and of hosting them. And again, this is now going before the pandemic, so I feel like the current parents might not be fully aware of the full history of it. But there was a time when these parties would be so out of hand, and there were some really negative things that happened in connection with these parties that then the parents would know about. And unfortunately, as a result of some of those things, you know, parents then said, no, I'm not doing that. But I feel now we're almost in a cycle where, because of the pandemic, everything kind of got quiet, that people might not fully appreciate those risks as they did before.
It's like they missed.
Yeah,
they missed a couple of years.
And the role of the police department is different too. Like, years ago, it used to be that a lot of parents would hire police for kind of like security at the front of the event, and then some things happened where, you know, parents might be expecting the police to intervene in certain things in the event and on their property, and that boundary became difficult to maintain. And so the police department now has very clear guidelines for what they will or will not do if you hire them to, like, kind of be on the street out in front of your graduation party. So I think that changed it too, because I think parents felt protected, which they should, right? Like, if the police are there, but then it became clear, like, they're still not protected from liability about what goes on where the police are not.
Yeah, it's not a fail-safe.
It's still your house. Yeah, it's still your house, and you're still responsible for what happens at it. So
I reached out to the police chiefs in West Dennis, Yarmouth, some of these higher visited Cape towns during, there's a Cape week for the seniors. Because I was so curious about how do you respond, or what do you want parents to know that are planning their 12th graders Cape Week visits. And what they were trying to tell me to tell to the parents of Longmeadow is, please do not let your teenagers host substance-related parties on the Cape, essentially. They have enough going on. They will respond to these calls in a way that, criminal charges are totally on the table for them. There's no relationships with the kids from Longmeadow with the law enforcement when they're on the Cape. Nothing like when officers in the town of Longmeadow. People are looking out for each other, keeping each other safe.
Right.
Just a very different animal. And when you rent a property in your own name for your 18-year-old, you are liable. Your social host liability is something that you're taking on for anything that happens at that party that might be risky or unsafe. And so we just wanted parents to know that. When planning Cape Week, you are on the hook for what's happening at those parties. Something I didn't know until a few years ago is these parties aren't happening like in a block of homes on, Wellfleet or Provincetown. They're all over the Cape. So there is driving happening. So there's a lot of driving. Hopefully that's sober driving. But the incidents, you're just like increasing the risk of a group of 18-year-olds potentially not making the safest choice around transportation and substance use. And it's just a humongous risk that families are taking on when they're endorsing sort of substance-related behaviors on the Cape. I think amazing parties can happen without binge drinking or without this risky substance use, and we just want to promote that most parents and most students do not think that that's a healthy thing to do, and that the norm is the healthy behaviors of Longmeadow teenagers and parents. 90% of Longmeadow parents do not allow teen drinking in their home, and that's something that hasn't changed in the years that I've been here. So it's the norm to do the healthy, safe thing, and keep it up. Keep up the great work. Anything I missed, Shelly, in talking with you about prevention and substance use in your role?
Oh, I think you covered quite a bit, so I appreciate it. And I think you covered. I won't say everything because there's so much to it, but
we covered
it all. We covered a lot.
We've turned over every rock. Well, I want to say this. So this is my last official hosting gig for Close Up as coalition coordinator for the Close Community Coalition. I took a new job as the prevention coordinator with the New England High Intensity Drug Trafficking area, and I'm going to start that in a few weeks. But I don't think this will be the last you'll hear of me here at Longmeadow Community Television and the Close Up program. But I just wanted to thank you, Shelly. You brought me in day one. You're the first person I saw during my interview process. You're going to be one of the last people I see in an interview setting as I go out my last week with the Close Community Coalition. But I just wanted to thank you so much for bringing me into this community and into the family of Longmeadow Public Schools. And it's just been an amazing place to work, and I cannot recommend enough if people are looking to work in a district or send their kids through a district. This is just an incredible place to be and to raise kids. So I just wanted to thank you for bringing me in.
Well, thank you. We have enjoyed having you as well, and you have helped us to have more of a prevention mindset about what we do. Because I feel like, by nature, we would at times be reactive, and I think that you came in, with more training on prevention than we had before, and I think that's started to permeate how we think about these things. So we really appreciate what you've done, and I know that we will still be seeing you in your new role. So that's helping me to be in a little bit of denial about your actual departure.
I'm not going too far.
You're not going far, right? We'll still see you. So
yeah, and I want to give my prevention mindset. I want to give the University of Massachusetts Amherst full credit in helping me get my master's in public health. The best university on the planet. Thank you to UMass. Thank you to you for supporting me in the last 7 years. And thanks to Longmeadow Community Television, Brian and Doug for producing this and in the edit room. Join us for the next close-up interview whenever and wherever that will be. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Shelly. Take care, guys.